Hi, this is Jose Coronado. This is the Service Design Show, and this is episode 240.
To move up in your career, you're told you have to become a business leader or a change manager. But what if that feels like giving up the very thing that made you a design professional in the first place? What if the price of that promotion is your own identity? That tension, that feeling of being pulled in two directions is exactly what we are going to untangle in this episode. Hi, if you're new here, welcome to the Service Design Show, where we invite the brightest minds in our field to explore what is truly needed to design great services that resonate with people, push businesses forward, and honor our planet. Our guest today has lived the very identity crisis we are exploring. For the first half of his career, Jose Coronado felt he had to separate his personal heritage from his professional persona to belong and succeed. A pivotal moment, however, showed him that this separation was a mistake and that his true power as a leader came from embracing his full identity. This insight now fuels his work advising top design executives and is a perspective he uses when building teams from the ground up in major corporations. And here's a fun fact, it's the same spirit of intentional growth that helped him transform from a mild introvert into the super connector people describe him as today. So in today's conversation, you are going to learn about the 3 levels of leadership you must master to stay influential and avoid irrelevance. Why your real job as a design leader is less about design and maybe more about change management. A simple, low-effort way to start developing your crucial business knowledge still this week, and how embracing your full identity is not a soft skill, but a true leadership superpower. One part of this conversation that really stood out was when we got into the friction between our work and leaders' expectations. Jose was diplomatic, calling their need for immediate results impatient, but we also explored the uncomfortable question of whether it's actually a lack of leadership from the other side. It's a moment that gets to the heart of why building trust is so difficult and at the same time so essential. Whether you are feeling the pressure to deliver short-term results or are a leader trying to manage expectations, I'm sure this episode will help you navigate that tension. Alright, there's a lot for us to untangle here, so let's jump right in. Enjoy the conversation with Jose, and I'll catch you on the other side for a few of my key takeaways. I am your host, Mark Fontijn, and you are listening to the Service Design Show. Welcome to the show, Jose.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be here.
Nice. We are going to talk about a light topic called, at least I call it that way, the Great Shift. The shift that is happening in design and leadership. You mentioned in our prep call that you feel that tectonic plates are moving. Which tectonic plates are we talking about, and which direction are they moving in?
Well, it's like an earthquake happening. If you take a look at the 2018 timeframe, so about 8 years ago, the rise of the design executive was in a positive direction. It was the trend was going up. Organizations that did not have executives in the design role were promoting those or creating those roles. Companies that had reserved roles for business and engineering now had designers in those distinguished or partner roles, for example. Fast forward to today, we're seeing a lot of design teams being decimated in organizations. And we are wondering what is going on. What was different? Well, there's a lot of economic conditions that are different. But I think one of the challenges that we have is that when we got there to that executive role, we didn't know what to do. We were not prepared to change our mindset and our behavior and the capabilities that we needed to bring to the forefront as leaders, more business leaders than not just design leaders. So we have to step back a little bit from substantially from the craft and change our behaviors in terms of business leadership. And the biggest area that I think is the gap for designers, just because our education does not have that, is that at that level, we're responsible for change management programs, transformation programs at a holistic perspective from an organization. We were never trained for that. Management consultants were, business leaders were, MBA people with background in business and management were. So we have to upgrade our skills in order to have an effective run at that level.
Okay, a lot to unpack here. So why you could ask, why are we having this conversation right now and not in 2018 when we were moving into the boardrooms?
I think, well, one of the catalysts of that conversation was the McKinsey Design Index report and the elevation of design at that level. I think one big change is happening is that back then things move a little bit slower. The pace of change was not as urgent and dramatic. The pandemic accelerated some of that change from analog to digital. But now we're in a new age of acceleration with the introduction of the technology and AI and the magic bullet of AI changing things. So the pace of change and the need for transformation within organizations, I think it's more acute and present right now. And I think that's one of many elements, including the uncertainty and at the political and economical level, that it is instilling more urgency in that pace of change within organizations.
If I go back to 2018, I was already doing the service design show. I think I was in my last days of the agency day. I would argue that people back then would also have said that the pace of change has accelerated tremendously, like social networks, mobile, crypto. 2018. Yeah, if you had bought Bitcoin back then, you would be well off right now. So, like, is it really, like, is change really accelerating that much, and is that right now the reason why we need to have this conversation about the shift in design leadership?
Well, I think it's not just the speed of change, but it is the urgency that organizations have, whether you're in a private or public organization, is to demonstrate what impact you're having. And the impact is not just on creating the products, but actually on demonstrating what business impact you could have. As I mentioned, whether it's on revenue recognition, bigger baskets if you're in a digital commerce, or engagement if you're in a consumer technology type of product, or on the back end of the products when you're working with employees, increasing efficiency, operational effectiveness, and savings from a back office perspectives. So I think it's a combination of factors. It's not just one single factor that comes to mind.
Wouldn't you say that this has always been the case? That, like, if we are doing good design, we should be able to connect it to the impact that we want to make, the changes we want to see in, I don't know, in customer behavior and whatever we're optimizing towards. So I can recognize this conversation being have held in the community for quite a while, that we need to focus on the impact that we're having. What do you feel is changing?
Yeah, I think the conversation has always happened, and designers have been talking about it for not just 10 years, 20 years, or ever since we raise up as a discipline, as a new discipline. I think that is another factor. Design as such is a much younger discipline than product and engineering. So we are going through the growing pains of maturity ourselves. I think I'm going to sidetrack here, but I think it's important. We're also one of the few, or the only, I would argue, the only discipline in the boardroom, for example, that is always in a constant crisis, and we're always picking on each other for whether it's a brand redesign or a launch of product that we don't like, and things like that. So we're creating our own crisis of
How
sorts.
so? Give us an example. Why do you feel that we are creating crises?
I mean, we're always talking about the should designers code or not. Now with AI, maybe we should do some of that, or like a brand redesign when like Jaguar launched its new brand and all designers pile up on that launch. I think there's enough problems around
Yeah,
to go around for us to solve than to pile up on each other. I argue that we as designers are the champions of empathy. We argue that, but we suck about being empathetic with one another. That's so that's why not only we should be empathetic to the people we are designing for, but we should be empathetic with the people we're designing with, our ourselves, our business partners, our technology partners.
that's an argument I can absolutely relate to and agree with. I haven't been in a boardroom too often to actually make a good, and you maybe have, to make a good judgment call if it's designers sort of fighting amongst each other. I can imagine that if you are the CTO, um, programmers, coders, tech engineers also have their own struggles and their own internal fights. Or is it just something that is related to design specifically?
Well, I think they might have their own troubles and tribulations, but we are the most in social media, the most visible ones. Or maybe because I follow other designers, that's why I'm seeing more of that stuff happening.
Yeah, I think the other fields have their own issues as well. I wouldn't. I don't think, sir. I don't think design is special in that sense that that we're creating our own crises. Okay, so we need to shift. The need to show impact has always been there, but you're saying it's accelerating. We've gotten to the boardrooms in some cases, chief design officers. Now, you also mentioned we need to sort of not step away from the craft, but add some additional skills, competencies, mindset shifts. Like, what are some of the first things that come to your mind, or that you advise to the people you're working with around this area?
Yeah, so this is a concept that I like a lot, and it's basically kind of the different levels of ability. The first one is craftsmanship. That's what got us here. So we know our craft, we know the design. The other one is a stagemanship. So how do you talk about the work you do? How do you promote it? And the third one is statesmanship. So how do you create the relationships, the diplomacy, the negotiations, the navigate the political waters of an organization? So I think those are the three levels. And when we are at that executive level, the statesmanship takes a different layer. And we have a leadership team that will take care of the people and the craft. And we have to advocate for our team, our impact, the change that we're generating, the kind of things that we're doing within the organization. If we stay closer to our craft, we are missing an opportunity to really develop those partnerships at the business, product, and technology levels. We also need to increase our technology fluency, from the perspective of the changes right now with AI. So if we don't know what kind of tools do we need, how can we enable our teams, what kind of training do we have, and it's not just for design, but it's like for the product, a cross-functional team. And those are the kind of things that we need to definitely embrace and be aware of in order to be able to influence change or drive change. Otherwise, we're going to be driven by the change through the leadership of our peers.
Yeah. For instance, by tech who has bigger budgets and more say. So if I summarize and understood correctly, craftsmanship, stagemanship, and estate
Yeah.
craft.
So
Yeah.
craftsmanship for craft is a stage for
Stage.
presentation, and a
Yes.
state for the policy relationships influence.
Okay.
And for you to get that influence, you have to deliver results. You have to be a trusted partner. You have to be a person that follows through all the time. So that's kind of the way I see the evolution and that growth path perspective.
I can imagine that everybody who's listening has a mental model of what craft could look like in their context, depending on the type of work they're doing. It could be related to research, it could be maybe more related to visual design. I don't know. Stage, like, what is that? What is that all about? What do you see there?
Basically, it is our ability to effectively present the work that we do. And I think one of the, and I have done that myself. One of the
How did
biggest
you do that?
problems.
Yeah.
What I say is I have done the stage perspective, the presentation of design in the bad manner. I go right into the knee deep of things. Like I give you the real estate tour and I show you the doors, the windows, the spaces, instead of taking a step back and giving you context. This was the problem that we have, and this is how we solve it from a product perspective. So how do you present effectively the work? I don't see myself as a salesperson, but let's face it, we're selling the value of the design and the work that we're doing. So how do we demonstrate that in an effective manner? And if we go with the broader perspective, with the business context, with the type of things that we are dealing with, then we can dominate that stage. So it's a matter of evolving our perspective, and we need to ensure that we are able to answer the business questions in an effective manner.
Interesting. Let's double click on this, because a lot of the practitioners that I speak to struggle a lot with effectively communicating the value of design. Like this is the question I've heard for the last 20 years. How do I communicate the value of design? People just don't get it. What are we doing wrong?
Well, I think the example that or I don't know if we already talked about these, so please check on me. When we talk about design best practices, this is what design gives you. This is the design system, for example. Instead of, if we do this, the hypothesis is we're going to increase engagement in the application. We're going to increase the basket size of the products that the people are buying from us, or we're going to ensure that we have a increased volume in money movement or payments. So we're using the same perspective. We're applying design best practices, but we're not talking about design. We're talking about business impact. What does that mean from a business point of view? And that change of language is absolutely important at every level of design, from the most junior designer to the most senior designer and the executives, in terms of ensuring that we're effectively communicating with our partners. And for that reason, I believe that one of the most important skills that we need to learn as designers is have the business knowledge, understand the business, the context of the business that we're operating in, whether it's a consumer-facing application or an enterprise user application. And the better we understand the business context, the easier, I would argue, that we could map our work with the type of impact that we're driving.
This is what we've been hearing so many times, and it's been thrown around quite lightly. We need to better understand business. We need to develop our business fluency. What do you mean? How do we do? What is that? What do we do? Do we start looking into Spreadsheets, what do we do?
So I'm going to give you a small case situation. When I was working with top financial bank, we developed a matrix of professional development for our team, and basically it was a 3x3 matrix. But I'm going to tell you what the three components were: um, partnerships and collaboration, business knowledge and data knowledge, and then the craft, the design part. So design was definitely part of it, but I think the most important components were the first two. How do we collaborate effectively with our partners, and how do we increase our knowledge of the space in which we're operating, and whether we did that through formal training or a embedding the designers in a, for example, in a training desk, or in a consumer in a customer service center, to make sure that they understood the context of the work that they were doing. And the best part of that program was that we were able to identify uh, global training needed for the entire team, communities of practice that needed certain areas of focus, and then individual needs of training. And all of them were basically addressed through the professional development program that we have created. And I think that that's a way in which you are approaching the problem from a holistic perspective, not just nail down on one particular area, but cover the different dimensions of growth that are needed in the organization.
And with that experience, if you would be able to do that all over again, you get hired by a different bank or maybe an automotive industry that also wants to set this up. Like, what's the lesson that you take away from having built that program there?
Well, I think the context matters,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that I was able to successfully do that in a bank does not necessarily translate one-on-one to a different industrial context or enterprise context or consumer context, for that matter. So I think understanding the context is absolutely critical. But the good news is that because we have tried something, we can make sure that it is adaptable and flexible to either extend or customize it to the particular context that we have. And I think that is one of the benefits of creating programs that are scalable but also adaptable to different situations. The matrix for a different enterprise might look different from a professional development perspective, but I think the approach might work in terms of understanding the organizational needs and context.
What I'm sort of trying to probe at is the fact that we need to get better at speaking the language of business. Very rarely I hear and see examples of how we can actually do that. Right? Do you get what I mean? So it's very easy to portray the message that we need to get better at it, but there's almost nobody that says, okay, start here. Like, where would you advise us to start?
Okay, so this is actually something that I speak both publicly and with my clients. And going back to the example of the bank, but basically any public organization has quarterly earnings calls. Join the quarterly earning calls. Listen to the executive as to how they talk about the conditions of the organization, the climate, the pressures, the headwinds, the tailwinds. That is an easy place to start. In the case of the bank that I was part of, there was also the annual letter of the CEO to the stakeholders. It was a long document, but it had everything from macroeconomic conditions to microeconomic trends that drove decisions that the bank made and the executives of the bank made. So there's easy ways. If you're in a public space, whether it's education or health, understand how how, what are the metrics of the organization, and they may not have the same requirements as a publicly traded organization in terms of reporting, but they still do talk about outcomes or enrollments, or you name it. Understand, uh, try to get an understanding of what is the space in which the organization is talking, the executives or the organization are talking about the business conditions, and those are low effort and also low time investment. The earnings call is generally speaking a 1 hour or maybe 2 hours on the max side. The letter to stakeholders or the annual report might be a little bit more, 1 hour or 2 hours that you have to invest in reading. But when you do that, that helps you. The other thing is, like, in a very complex environment, you may need some formal training too. So it's a multi-layer approach to understanding the business. It's not just a directive, go understand the business and I'll see you later. It's like multiple facets of gaining and growing your understanding of the business in which you are navigating in.
All right. So do we need to get an MBA degree, all of us?
No, no, no. Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because when I was in grad school, if I, as an industrial designer, wanted to do that, I have to get 2 degrees: my MFA in industrial design and an MBA in business. The good news is that education is evolving, and there's many organizations that are now doing um, graduate degree programs on that combine business and design, whether they are on the business school or they are on the design school. SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, is a good example of a master on business innovation and design management. So it's like those kind of programs are newer, but they have kind of that combination of and balance between the design and the business knowledge that you may need.
And the business knowledge, again, to summarize and to clarify if I'm getting this right, you're referring to the dynamics that drive investments, that drive how resources are allocated, how decisions are being made. Like I said, headwinds, tailwinds. What is driving the people who hold the money to make certain decisions? Is that a fair assumption?
That is certainly a critical one. And as a design discipline, we were not trained in terms of that rigor and discipline of managing our teams. When we had small teams, it was a lot easier. Let's say 20 to 50 people in our team. It was fairly straightforward. But now we're seeing organizations with 200, 300, 400 design deep organizations in terms of their composition. Those are large budgets. Those are large number of people that we have responsibility over, and in turn we also have to demonstrate to the business how we're allocating those people to the programs, ensure that they are aligned to the priorities of the organization, that they are delivering on the impact level perspective. So when I talk about rigor and discipline, I don't mean constrain the designer's creativity. I just mean enhance and expand our business discipline of how we run a design organization. The same way that technology has a few thousand people, they run it in a very rigorous manner. So we have to take some of those approaches as well as we run design teams of different sizes.
And what's the most challenging aspect in getting there? What have you seen? Where do people stumble the most often in that process?
Well, I'm going to make an anonymized anecdote comment. When I got to an organization, a very large enterprise, I go like, jokingly, I said, "Do we know where our children are?" What I meant was, "Do we know where our designers are?" And the answer was like, "Well, yeah, we kind of know." And we go like, "Okay, let's start there. Let's understand where our designers are, what kind of programs they're working on." And what we uncovered at the end of the exercise was there were designers that were, quote unquote, split into 10 different projects. 1/10 of a designer is really not effective at all. Let's
Depends
face
on
it.
which part you have. Maybe if
Yeah.
you have the brain or the hands. If you get lucky,
So
you get the best part. Yes.
yeah. So having that clear understanding of where your people are, what kind of programs, and how many programs some of them are working on. So having that understanding is absolutely important at every level. The other thing is when we get budget allocations. Okay, your team is going to grow by X number of designers. If let me rephrase these. When we were having some growth spurs in our design teams, okay, you get 100 designers this year, and we spend the whole year hiring designers. So at the end of the year, they said, what did you do with the money? What was the impact that you created? And then at the end, oh no, we were just hiring people. We didn't have them on day one. And many organizations are not, if we are not communicating and setting expectations clearly and providing frequent updates to our partners, then those organizations run out of patience and they don't see the results of the investment. So that's when they go like, okay, I didn't see results, so now I'm taking back some of that investment for other areas where I can see that impact.
Isn't that that not seeing their results? Isn't that a lack of leadership? It depends on the time frame, but I would say, in your example, if you don't understand that it takes a while to actually hire people to get a return on investment, that you need to onboard them, whatever, and you get disappointed that you don't see results within a year, like, isn't that a sign of incompetence and lack of clear leadership? Or is it like, are we to blame?
Well, I think it's a combination. I wouldn't call it incompetence. I will call it impatience.
I would
I
call
want.
that incompetence. You can get me on record. Impatience is way too soft. Yeah.
Well, I am trying to be a little bit more diplomatic about it.
Yeah, I'll take on that role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think patience is critical, but patience is only built on the fact that you are communicating clearly with your partners. Another example, we were working on complex portfolio, and we were providing to our design leader peers the data that they needed to have informed conversations with their partner about progress, about impact, about challenges that they were facing. When it was time for forecast for budget planning for the next fiscal year, I was surprised to discover that one of the leaders that we were working with very closely was not meeting periodically with their partners. So when it got time for budget and extend the hand and ask for more people, I mean, I'm joking about the answer, but it was like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen you.
Mm-hmm.
And now you come asking me for additional investment. So we have to be present, and we have to create forums like a quarterly business review or a monthly update with our partners, because if they see us, we keep them updated, and we give them a kind of a forecast or a commitment of, this is what we're going to be working on next. Are those the right priorities? Validation and communication are absolutely critical. And many times, many times we're not used to that. We were just putting our headset, doing the design work, delivering the design work. And that is one of the things that I encourage. I mean, you need downtime and you need concentration time, but take your headset off. Talk to the people that you're working with, interact with them, break bread, have lunch or dinner with them. That way you can build relationships that can be substantially more productive rather than when you are isolated or you are not having those common times with your partners.
It's finding that the time or investing that time that also feels like so challenging, especially if you're in a context where everything is moving fast. Like you said, there's a lot of pressure to deliver results. Everybody is focused on shipping stuff. So, of course, you'd set up your headset and just go to work instead of investing in a long-term relationships, right? Just because you're not going to be judged on long-term relationships. You're going to be judged on what did you ship at the end of the month. And that's a problem at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think I mean certainly that's a challenge that we have. But the old proverb, the old African proverb, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And I think that is fully applicable in the business context. Can you develop applications in a week with the current AI tools? Absolutely. Can you support them? Can you grow them? Can you expand them? Maybe you need a little bit of a team for that to happen.
I really liked your suggestion, and I don't know how explicit it was, but I will make it explicit right now. It would be so interesting if the design department, if there is a department, design team, whatever you want to call it, would have a monthly business update or a quarterly earnings update just from the design team. That would be such an interesting exercise. Just the conversation about what are we going to talk about would be so helpful. Who are we going to invite? Have you seen examples of this?
Yeah, and I have had to do it with different degrees of success in the organizations in which I have been a part of, and we invite our business partners, our product partners, our technology partners. I think in some organizations is a little bit more difficult to quantify that direct. Okay, design did this part, and that translated into X impact. So what I have done, and I have tried to get away with it, is I talk about design contribution to the product team, and then the product team generated this kind of impact. So I'm not alienating my business partners because I'm working with them directly. And so it is super interesting. In one organization, we were able to track around $1.2 billion on revenue growth from a design contribution perspective, and about 150 or 175 million dollars in savings in enterprise efficiency, in operational efficiency in that cross-functional team. So it may not be a one-to-one. Okay, design is responsible for $1 billion of revenue, but design was part of the product team that created that kind of impact.
Yeah, but that's a loophole, of course, right? In a good sense and in a bad sense. And again, everybody who's listening here with us will recognize the challenge of attribution or correlation or causality. It's almost impossible to, unless you're Amazon and doing A/B testing and like have a controlled environment, to actually pinpoint what your specific contribution was. The measurement systems often aren't in place. But if you're part of an organization that is making money and is profitable, like everybody could say, well, I was part of this organization that increased its revenue or profit by 5% last year, right? That is the loophole, and works the other way around as well.
Yeah, but I think there's clear let's say journey teams or experience teams where the role of design is more prevalent.
Explicit, yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's organizations like a bank, for example. A bank would be very allergic to the contribution perspective. It's like, okay, engineering is responsible for 99999 app time. What is design responsible for? And you cannot say I contributed to that 0.9999 app time of the systems. So yes, there's spaces in which it's a lot more difficult to get a number or a metric of attribution to design. But the key factor is, are we communicating consistently and periodically with our partners to understand, look, these are the priority programs we're working on. Oh, priorities are shifting. You have to take on these new programs or these new projects. Okay, if capacity is the same and priorities are changing, capacity should change to the new programs that you're asking for. If you need these in addition to the already committed areas, either we go to agency, we go to temporary staff, or we get new people to join the team. So those kind of negotiations do not, or those kind of conversations only happen when you are in periodic and constant communication with your partners. And I think a monthly or a quarterly forum are perfect vehicles to do that. It's not just about impact, but it's about everything that's happening around the portfolio, the prioritization, the areas that we're not covering, the areas that we're covering, and how we handle those conversations and situations.
I would love to get your perspective on sort of the issue that you addressed. And I love the example where engineering has a uptime responsibility and it's very tangible, very explicit. Everybody understands that if your mobile banking app doesn't work, that is going to cost you money. So the business case is quite easily made there. And it almost feels like cheating from the other end that they project the same expectation of measurement and the same they are using the same ruler on a completely different field of expertise, and we are trying to sort of push the peg in the hole and trying to sort of live up to the standards engineers have put up onto us instead of setting our own standards. So how do you navigate a conversation like that?
Well, I think it's all a matter of context, and I'm going to give you one example. I was responsible for a content design team in part of my roles in house, and this content design team, alongside with research, they will call up to say this feature that we have is not creating the impact that we're trying to drive, and they did some testing in terms of how do we call this feature type of perspective. They changed the name of the feature. Content and research were driving that, and the change resulted in about $100 million in revenue once that renaming of the feature happened. So that is a clear example where there's design driving and design creating that kind of impact. The feature was built, the product was already released, but it wasn't working. How can we change it to make it happen? So I think it is, I think it is not fair that we're expected to have those kind of things, but the world is not fair. We have to figure out how do we demonstrate the impact that we have. I also run design systems teams. How do we articulate the impact of a design system team? I was lucky enough to have amazing partners and leaders in those design systems teams that I have been working with. In one of them, we were able to articulate multi-million-dollar impact in terms of development savings. So it's like figuring out what are the metrics that are important in your organization and articulate that. And it could be reducing the number of support tickets. It could be, you name it. I mean, there's many metrics that you can tap on, and pick 1, 2, or 3 that you can measure and that you can show kind of a trend of progress. And then once those are established, then pick another 2 or 3 that can help you. So I think those are the path that we can choose to articulate that impact.
And like I said before, the people who are holding the budgets, who are making the investments, they will have numbers, they will have targets, they will be able to tell you what the things are that they are looking at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year. And if you help them nudge those numbers in the right direction, then you probably already have a pretty solid case.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of a critical and important partnership. When I have had a close partnership with our finance team and our finance partner, I have been able to identify some of those because I'm working closely with them. When I have had been in a role in organizations where my finance partners are in a black box and I don't have access to them, my ability to understand and create that impact or identify those areas that are important to the organization has been more difficult. So depending on where you are, you have to understand those relationships.
I'm curious. We should get a finance person on the show one day. how they feel about this, because you always hear like we have this triad of design, engineering, product. Where's finance? Why isn't finance at the table? Maybe they are having the same discussions as we are over here. Like, why aren't we getting involved? But I would agree. Like, if you have access to the people whose expertise it is to understand those numbers, to understand the cash flow, to understand priorities, like that's great.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And now the finance conversation reminded me of another quick anecdote. In a particular organization that I was working with, finance had a team of process improvement people, and they would argue that design was intruding in their territory because we were also doing service improvement, service design, uh, from a back office perspective, and how that manifested in the other areas of the organization. So, unintentionally, we were having a situation of friction between finance and our design team. But if we don't have those conversations, then we don't know that friction is happening. So how do we navigate that? How do we clarify the roles? How do we partner together rather than going our merry way? So it's very interesting, and as I mentioned, it depends on the context of your organization and the kind of people that you need to identify that are driving those changes or those transformation programs that you can partner with and map some of the impact of your team.
Find the person who has access to the profit and loss balance sheet. That and get that person on your team. Become friends with them. That would be, I think, a good piece of advice. Jose, one thing we didn't yet sort of get into, but is also relevant and interesting to our conversation right now, is you mentioned something around that leadership becomes around change management rather than the craft. There's always like a tension here, as in, if business leadership becomes about change management, like, is this still a design responsibility? Like, shouldn't we have people who are change managers? Shouldn't they be in those positions? Like, is it for us?
I argue that if we want to belong to the executive layer of the organization, we have to have some of those skills in our toolbox and those capabilities. As I mentioned briefly, we either are part of driving that change or we're going to be driven by that change.
And that is the big frustration most of us face, right?
Exactly. So we either put up or shut up, basically. Yeah. And in many cases, it's like, okay, you're not invited. You're excluded from the conversation. So that's there lies the challenge that we have.
In our prep call, you also mentioned a lot about your heritage, your background, your identity, and sort of marrying your professional and your personal identity. I'm curious, how does this translate into the identity crisis that this might cause for a lot of people who come from a, let's call it a traditional design background, and now they suddenly have to think about profit and loss sheets and about change management? Like, I can imagine that feels like a very strong internal struggle.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to share with you the anecdote, or share with the audience the anecdote about my evolution in terms of my mind shift. When I first got to the U.S., I wanted to make sure that I was understood, that I was heard, that I was part of, that I was integrated. So I separated kind of my professional life from my personal life in terms of I wanted to belong. I wanted to be part of it. And that happened basically in the first half of my career. And I developed, as part of the Hispanic Heritage Month, I created a panel of design leaders from Hispanic heritage, where, Spanish, Portuguese, a group of people. And at the end of that event, that panel, I was approached by several people and received a lot of messages that said, Jose, thank you for doing this. I have never seen myself reflected in my future as a potential executive leader in the design field. And many other things happened, but that was one of the ones that really changed my perspective in terms of bringing my whole self. My Hispanic heritage background is part of who I am, and it doesn't have to separate it from my professional persona, to say the least. And so over the last 10 years, I basically have evolve in terms of making sure that when I'm building teams, I'm not building, the matrix style with just hiring John Smith, people with your same background, with your same education, with your same type of experience, but looking at unexpected places for talent, whether it's intensive, immersive bootcamp, or a different type of degree, or different type of heritage and origin, basically embracing all the dimensions of diversity to make sure that we have a rich team from a knowledge perspective, challenges to each other. One of the things that I do is I prefer not to hire for culture fit, but actually for culture complement. What are we missing that we can add to the team so that we can become better together?
If I understand correctly, what you're saying is evolve your identity instead of throwing one identity away, and like it's not like a jacket that you put on and off, which literally happens, I guess, when people enter the boardroom. Like they dump the sneakers and I don't know, the sweaters, the hoodies, and they put on a suit, and they take on a new identity and lose all the rich and valuable experiences that they should bring to that specific area.
Yeah, I think basically it's about embracing our identity and bringing our whole self to the conversation. I think,
yeah, Jose, like this is so hard. And I've had the fortune to speak to a few design leaders here on the show, and quite a lot of them tell stories about the fact that they regret having left their design identity behind the moment they got into positions of quote unquote power. They sort of, like you said, in order to belong, started to conform to what they thought was expected of them and like the image that was being portrayed, right?
Yeah, I think there's there needs to be a balance. I mean, in everything there needs to be a balance. One in my conversation with design leaders and executives that I have been working with through the years, one of the ways of keeping that identity is picking, for example, one program that you are going to be closer to, that your team is driving, so you can kind of keep that connection with the craft, with the essence of the design work that you do. But that only can take a small percentage of your time in comparison to the rest of the work that you need to do, the relationships that you have to build up and across the organization from that perspective. But I don't think you need. I don't believe you need to renounce to your craft and to separate yourself from design. But if that is something that you're missing, maybe picking that important high priority project and staying a little closer to it might help that balance as a whole.
What I'm seeing and hearing is that once people start moving up the chain of command and into positions where they are further away, removed from the craft, they don't necessarily miss the project or the work, but they start to lose or they don't bring the design approach, the design mindset into the areas like the boardroom, right? Mm-hmm. And I see you're melting in the sun, by the way. For people who are watching the video and seeing you move, it's the sun that's teasing you. But yeah, so like being, you can still be a design professional in the boardroom without actually working on the specific projects, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that so you're kind of let's call it, you're putting your business leadership hat, but you're still carrying the flag for and
Exactly.
advocating for design. That doesn't mean you're renouncing to design. You're actually, you have the responsibility to drive that through. And that also means sometimes you would come to the realization that you have to uh, give up like an opening, a role for your team, because another area might be needing that role, and you understand that trade-off needs to happen. Your team may not see it in that way, but it is the kind of business responsibility that you have when you're driving that kind of change perspective.
Okay, so let's get full circle. We started off with tectonic plates that are shifting, the need to evolve design leadership into business leadership. You've given some practical examples, where to start, what to look for, what the qualities are. If somebody made it to the end of our conversation here, what's one piece of advice you'd give them if they are maybe they want to get on this? They don't want to get swallowed by the earthquake. They do want to make the shift, but they are struggling. Like, what's the piece of advice that you'd give them?
Well, I think, and this applies for both individual contributors and leaders alike. I think I would suggest that when you make a commitment, you deliver on that commitment. As you deliver on commitments, you're building trust and influence with your partners, and continue evolving that or growing that trust and influence with your partners, and bring other people along for the ride. If you have a junior designer in your team, help them and mentor them. If you have the opportunity to create a partnership with a product or technology a person in your organization, do that. And just kind of that combination of factors, delivering on the work that you do, keeping your commitments, increasing the trust, increasing the influence, will help not just you, definitely you as an individual, but it will help design as a discipline as a whole. And I hope that we all can take a little bit of that with us as we go on the work that we're doing with our partners and in the situations that we're moving in, whether you're an agency designer or an in-house designer or an external consultant or advisor.
Building or rebuilding trust, I guess that's a big mission that we are all on, and re-establishing the credibility of design. Not something that we'll solve in a week or two, but this will. It's a multi-year project. Jose, okay, one final thing. We like to end with a question rather than an answer. So if you could leave us with a question you feel is valuable to think about, to spend our mental energy on, what's a question that you'd like us to think about?
Well, I think going to the headline and the tail end of our conversation, what capability or behavior change could I take on to ensure that I am relevant and my team is relevant to the organization and the kind of business problems that we have? What is that thing that we can change or add to our toolbox or our behaviors to make sure that we are able to keep the energy and the momentum behind the work we do and the practice of design in the organizations?
I would immediately, thank you for that question. I would immediately think about who defines whether we are relevant or not. That is, I think, also a pretty important question, and maybe a spicy one. But we'll leave it at this. Jose, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your stories and bringing your wisdom to the Service Design Show. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the audience for sticking around and listening to our conversation. Really appreciate it.
I've been reflecting on Jose's idea of the 3 levels of leadership: craftsmanship, stagemanship, and statesmanship. For so long, we focused almost exclusively on the craft. It's clear that our influence is kept by our ability in the other two. The idea he shared of a design team holding its own quarterly earnings call is so powerful because it forces us into that leadership mindset of statesmanship and accountability. It's challenging though, but it feels like the key to building the trust and credibility our work deserves. I want to give a big thanks to Jose for giving us such a practical and somewhat provocative new tool to think with. If you have enjoyed today's conversation, you can do me one big favor. Click that like button on this video and be sure to leave a short comment if you haven't done so already. Not to feed the algorithm, but to let me know whether or not we are on the right track by addressing topics like this. Finally, before we part ways, please take a moment to reflect and celebrate that by joining us today, you have directed your attention towards learning and growing as a professional. So, from everyone who you are going to impact through your work, thank you for taking the time and making the commitment. My name is Mark Fontijn, and I look forward to having you with us again for a new conversation on the Service Design Show. Take care and see you soon.